Hi everybody, Kat here for Lifted Up today, and we are in Matthew 12 today, and this is just such a wonderful, juicy chapter full of lots of good teaching value in here for us. And you know, it kind of starts to get on your nerves after a while to hear about these Pharisees when you go through here. I mean, it really covers a lot of the different way that they were being, they're being very hypocritical, and they were constantly trying to find a way to destroy Jesus, constantly trying to find a loophole in the law to try to find him slipping up somewhere so they can attack him. And so that brings us into question number 1, which was consider the ways that religious leaders attacked Jesus in verses 1 through 14. What was their strategy? And that is just it. They're trying to find a loophole to try to make, to embarrass him, to try to not just embarrass him, but in the word here in chapter 12, verse 14, it says that they're plotting to destroy him. That's really what they want. And so there's so much that these guys just don't get. But anyway, let's start off with number 1 here. I mean, Jesus and his disciples are going through, at the beginning of the chapter, they're going through the grain field. It's the Sabbath. They're hungry, and the disciples begin to pick the heads of grain and eat them. Okay, so the Pharisees see this and they're like, what? No, I think we got him. And they're saying, why is it? They go to Jesus, and it's not like they went to the disciples and said, why are you doing that? That's not lawful. No, they didn't want to slip up the disciples. They wanted Jesus. They wanted to take down the teacher, the leader of these disciples. And so they said, why is it that your disciples are doing what's not lawful to do on the Sabbath? Well, and so this is really, really interesting. Actually, no law prohibited the plucking of grain in order to eat it on the Sabbath. I'm going to read you some of my notes here. Gleaning handfuls of grain from a neighbor's field to satisfy one's immediate hunger was explicitly permitted. In Deuteronomy 23:25, what was prohibited was labor for the sake of profit. So what they were doing was seeing the disciples working. You're picking grain on the Sabbath, so that technically you're working. And now the rest of this note says thus a farmer could not harvest for profit on the Sabbath, but an individual could glean enough grain to eat. So there wasn't anything wrong with what they were doing. Okay, so sorry, I got an interruption. Just got a phone call. So what they weren't out there, harvesting the whole field or anything like that for profit. They were just gleaning a few things to eat because they were hungry, and that was okay. That was fine with the Lord. That was fine with God, but what the Pharisees were trying to do was look for a way that they could tie that into sinning somehow, and breaking the law. And they weren't. Now, Jesus reminded them, he said, have you not read what David did when he was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests. And then he goes on to say, or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Yet I say to you that in this place there is one greater than the temple. Okay, and so basically, what does that mean? What he's referring to is that David and his men, King David and his men were out doing battles, and there was all of this, hubbub going on out there. They were fighting battles and all, and they were very hungry. They didn't have any food. They ended up going into the temple, and there was a special bread that was reserved for ceremonial purposes in the temple. That was the showbread. Well, there wasn't anything else to eat, and so he and his men ended up sharing this showbread. What Jesus is saying here is it was perfectly fine for them to eat that. There was nothing wrong with that. Let me read you a note on that. The consecrated bread of the presence, 12 loaves baked fresh each Sabbath, which was usually eaten by the priests only. Leviticus 24:5-9. God was not offended by David's act done to satisfy a legitimate need when his men were weak with hunger. And you can actually find that that reference in 1 Samuel 21, 4 through 6. And there's also other notes referring to this on Mark, in Mark 2:26 and Luke 6:30. But anyway, and then, so he wasn't upset, the Lord wasn't upset with what David did because it was a legitimate need. He wasn't in there just, being disrespectful. And then you see where Jesus said that the priests profane the Sabbath. What he meant was that the priests have to do their work on the Sabbath. Right? Proving that some aspects of the Sabbath, not working on the Sabbath, some of those restrictions are not inviolable moral absolutes, but rather precepts pertaining to the ceremonial features of the law. In other words, you can't just take it to mean it whatever you want. You're missing the point of what that was meant for. And Jesus kind of like explains a little bit more about what he means by that into the next section, because here they are at him again. Oh, and I need to point out in verse 6, where he says there's somebody here in this place that's greater than the temple. What he is claiming in verse 6 here again is that he is God. There's someone greater than this whole temple, the showbread, everything that you think is just ceremonially sacred. You have somebody who's greater than all of that, and that is me. You actually have God in the flesh walking here, and you don't even see it. You're missing the point. And so then in verse 7, he says, "But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless." Who's the guiltless? Jesus is the guiltless. And he's basically telling them, if you'd have known what that truly meant, you would have understanding. You wouldn't be after me like this. You wouldn't be accusing the one who's done no wrong. And then in verse 8, he says, "For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath," reminding them that basically Christ has the prerogative to rule not only over their man-made Sabbatarian rules, because they took the law and then they added traditions on top of that, and that's what they were trying to judge him by as well. So not only are they trying to judge him by trying to find a loophole in the law, but they're also trying to judge Jesus by their own traditions that they added and piled on top of the law that has nothing to do with the law that God set forth in the Old Testament. So Jesus also has the right to rule over the Sabbath itself, which was designed for worshiping God. Again, this was an inescapable claim to deity, and as such, it prompted the Pharisees' violent outrage. So now they're saying, "What? He's claiming to be God again. Oh, we really need to destroy him now." And so we see they're still looking at him in the next section here. Once we start in verse 9, he had departed from there. He went into their synagogue, and behold, there was a man who had a withered hand, and then Jesus healed him. And so they said, "Oh, whoa, wait a minute. Here we go with work again. You're violating working on the Sabbath. Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" Okay, so you have to look at this and you have to go, you're really missing the point now, because not only is he like completely healing this man with a withered hand, maybe, and remember what we were talking about is that Jesus' miracles here are here to authenticate who he is, who is God in flesh, able to do these things. I think they're missing the point if all they're wondering about is maybe this healing is violating the law of not working on the Sabbath. I'm sorry, but if I was dying on the Sabbath, I would want God to heal me. Don't they get that? Anyway, so it could be kind of frustrating watching these guys tripping all over themselves. But anyway, so Jesus answers them. And he says, "What man is there among you who has one sheep, and if it falls into the pit on the Sabbath, will he not lay hold upon it and lift it out? Of how much more value then is a man than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." He actually has to tell them it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. Oh, now he heals him. And he says, and he stretched it out, and it was restored as whole as the other. So he was going to heal him when they attacked him, and then he healed him. Anyway, I just think that is amazing. Jewish tradition prohibited the practice of medicine on the Sabbath except in life-threatening situations. So maybe they're saying, wait, it's not a life-threatening situation. This guy could still have a withered hand tomorrow. Why can't you take care of it then? Okay, still, he's God. Here, you're missing the point. But no law in the Old Testament forbade the giving of medicine, healing, or any other acts of mercy on the Sabbath. It's always lawful to do good. So Jesus is still covered. As far as the law goes, Jesus never broke any of the law. And so if it's still lawful to do good, and it was still lawful to heal with medicine, they were just trying to trip him up, I guess, and try to find something to pick on him about. I'm watching my time. I'm good. Okay, so let's go on here. And I'm just I'm watching their blunders. It's just incredible. Okay, I think we answered number 2 in the response to number 1 here. And that was, as you compare the Pharisees and second accusation against Jesus with their response, what irony do you see? And that was that, it's just ironic, the whole, you're not supposed to be healing on the Sabbath thing. Okay, so, all right, I noticed my time is getting a little bit short, so we've got a couple other things that are really important I didn't want you to miss in this chapter, and I don't want to just rush, but I'm going to do a part 2 to this, so I urge you to go there and finish this chapter with me, and we will answer number 3 to this next question. All right, love you guys, and I'll see you over in Matthew 12 chapter part 2. All right, bye.